Mike Dean on the radio. Holla at me.
Yo, yo, yo. How you doing out there? Listen, this is your boy Mike Dean. We on Holla at Me live. And I'm telling you, we just gonna get right to it. We just gonna get right to it tonight. I'm really I'm excited, but at the same time, I felt a burden to switch gears today. And so we invited some guests to come on. We have Dr. Chanel Jones, and she's very highly respected in criminology, and she teaches at Ohio Dominican College here in Columbus, Ohio. She also wrote an article on Ferguson, and so Dr. Chanel, I just want to welcome you to Holler at Me. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, look at that! Look at that! And and I got my boy Maurice Good all the way from Brooklyn, New York, and he's on, and we're gonna have this powerful conversation. And also later on in this conversation, we're gonna have live all the way from Baltimore, Maryland, where all of this is taking place at Apostle Brian Keith Williams will come on, and he's actually at a town hall meeting with some other pastors and leaders um, in Baltimore, Maryland as well. So right now, I just want to just get it started. We know what's going on out there. You know, it's a lot of rioting. You got the guy that got really, just all of these different things that's happening. And so having Dr. Jones on, Dr. Jones, just kind of tell us about what you think about all the issues that we're facing right now in terms of social justice. I know you wrote the article on Ferguson and what's happening here in what happening there in Baltimore, Maryland.
Right. So we had a situation where the young man by the name of Freddie Gray died in police custody. I believe 80% of his spine was fractured to some extent. And so his funeral was yesterday. After the funeral, several riots, protests, civil unrest broke out in the city of Baltimore. And many people are angry, many people are frustrated. I was particularly frustrated when I saw images of the city, parts of the city just being burned down. You see stores, whatnot, being burned down, and people really engaging in violence throughout most of the night. And there's some protests still going on today. And as disturbing as the images are, and you never want to see people engage in violence. You never want to see people be violent towards law enforcement and the cops and whatnot. I think we also need to have a moment of pause and look back and see why exactly are the people uprising? Why are people upset? Why are they protesting? Why are they marching? And why are they essentially engaging in violent demonstrations across the city? So quick are we to often pass judgment without getting to the root causes of the issue. So when you talk about my article, I wrote it when the situation in Ferguson happened because, of course, that situation, there were a lot of violent demonstrations as well. But it is very, very relevant today for the situation that is also going on because we see these same violent protests, but nobody is pausing to question why are these protests happening in the first place? What is causing the situation? And when we think about violence, it never happens in a vacuum, okay? It's not a one-time incident. It usually results as a result of an accumulation of several incidents that gets to a point of escalation where people reach a breaking point. And then that breaking point is where we see the violence because they have no other means or don't know any other way to express their frustration. So ultimately what we're seeing is physical manifestations of rage that have built up over several years if you look at the lineage of police community relations in Baltimore. And this is very, very disturbing.
Wow. And and listening to you, Dr. Jones, it's a lot of like for me when I look at this situation, you look at what happened to Mike Brown, Trayvon Martin, I forgot all the names, but you had the guy in Cleveland. You had all these different issues um, happening, and I just believe people are tired of this injustice, and so when I look at what's happening there, it's people are like, okay, how can we be heard? And many people feel like only way we can be heard if we do something that's damaging to some other property. They burn in police cars. Their CVS got burnt down. There were all kind of demonstrations, and what I believe the media didn't show was a lot of the respectful people that was out there really standing for what was right. And so, Maurice Good, I know you're here, man. Like, and you from Baltimore. That's where you from. So, I mean, what's the word on the street there? I mean, what's going on?
Well, you and Dr. Jones hit on some points. Yeah, I am born and raised in Baltimore. Better yet, I'm born and raised in West Baltimore, not too far from where a lot of the demonstration was taking place. Um, you know, as I've been telling people, young people are frustrated. They're frustrated, they hurting, and they've been speaking from their heart, and they've been speaking from a place of pain. And so that's what you're seeing. Right now, Baltimore is a very poor city. It's actually a big town, but it has a big city name. It has a city name, and reputation. And so, therefore, the city is broke. The city is broke, and they keep dishing out. They keep having to pay out settlements for, I'll say, alleged police brutality. I read an article today by, I can't pronounce the brother's first name. I want to say Tahisi Coates, and he writes on a regular for the Atlantic. And he wrote an article today or yesterday called "Nonviolence: Nonviolence as Compliance," and I shared that with my students today because they needed an outlet to talk about this. And so what's happening in Baltimore is that these young people for so long haven't had an opportunity to have an outlet. They saw Ferguson the same way people are seeing Baltimore right now. So they've seen Ferguson. They've seen New York with Eric Gardner. They've seen the situation in New York with Sean Bell. They've
Right.
seen the situation in Oakland with Oscar Grant.
Right.
And we can go on and on and on with the names. And these young people are identifying. There's a kinship there, and so they identifying and they saying that could be my brother, that could be my uncle, that could be my father, that could be my mother, And so when you have these, as Dr. Jones said, you keep having these occurrences, right? And with each time, the people in the establishment is saying it's an isolated incident. And they're saying, how can it be an isolated incident when it keeps happening? And furthermore, it's happening to them. They may not have been killed, but they've been disrespected. They've been mistreated, and so they're just tired, and then you have on the flip side, you have the elders who are, saying, let's do this peacefully because they are afraid for their children. They're afraid that their children are going to be gunned down in the street. But the children are saying in response, we don't have anything to fear because we have nothing. And so, that's what I saw. I just came back from Baltimore Sunday night. I took some young people to Morgan State University on a campus tour on Friday and decided to stay down there because I wanted to get the pulse of the city. And, and so I drove around and I saw, that the young people feel like we have absolutely nothing to lose.
Wow. And Dr. Jones, when I look at this, Dr. King said, "Riot is the language of the unheard." And so we had people, they was, doing some protesting that was peaceful, and but then you have people that actually just went for it. Is Baltimore the tipping point, or is it the boiling point? Like, what's your opinion?
Well, I don't know if it. I wouldn't say it for the situation in Baltimore. I would say the Freddie Gray incident is the tipping point for Baltimore.
Okay.
On a national scale, are we there yet? I do not know. I know if you look at just how the criminal justice system has consistently, and we didn't even say historically, treated African Americans, they have been disproportionately arrested, right? They have been disproportionately incarcerated. African Americans only comprise 13% of the U.S. population. However, 29% of arrests, 38% of prisoners in state and federal prisons, 42% of death penalty cases, 37% of executions. We have African Americans being racially profiled, stopped, and frisked at disproportionate rates in comparison to others. And not only that, then you have this huge disproportionate number of African Americans being murdered, Black men and Black women being murdered by police officers. And then what we are not seeing, however, is the accountability for the officers after some form of investigation is done. They're either placed on administrative leave with pay, or they continue to be reassigned to desk duty, or, there are no charges filed or whatnot. And I think we are just at a point where, especially in Baltimore, because I believe Freddie Gray was the 111th person to be brutalized by police officers there. People are just tired. And so, I teach in my classes this notion of procedural justice. And procedural justice is understanding that when an officer does something, as long as they are transparent and make it clear, okay, this action led to this outcome, then there is more understanding. But we haven't seen this idea of procedural justice or transparency with law enforcement. All we typically see is the cover-up and no accountability. And that's where some of that anger is also coming from. So people are just at the point where they are tired of seeing Black men and women being brutalized, being murdered by police officers. And this was Baltimore's situation. Yeah, Eric Garner was New York's situation. Tamir Rice was Cleveland's situation. You have Walter Scott down in South Carolina. And so at some point, we need to look at these incidents. They all happen within their respective communities, but collectively, they speak to a much larger issue with how African Americans have been treated historically within the criminal justice system.
So what about Eric Garner, right, down in South Carolina? I mean, in broad daylight, a police officer guns this man down as he is running away.
Oh, Walter Scott.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, Walter Scott. Walter Scott gunned down, broad daylight. I mean, that was bold to me. I mean, seeing that, it was actually horrifying. I mean, just watching this police officer gun this man down. And so now you have all of these different things happening. Boom, boom, boom. Mike Brown. All the things that like you just said, all the different guys and even women that have been brutally attacked by officers. I mean, what's the solution here? What does our criminal justice system have to think about? Does it start on a federal level? Is it a state level thing? Is it kind of a local issue? How do we really address this issue and so that it can be justice across the board?
Well, it's going to take a collective action from both the state level as well as the local level as well as the federal level. So, in order to really remedy this situation, and it's not going to happen overnight, first off, we need to be cognizant of the officials that we elect in office, right? Because then your elected officials, they influence policy. But in addition to doing that, then we have to look at the culture of police, okay? The culture of policing for many of these departments are ones that adhere to what we call the blue close silence. So if one officer does something, the other officers tend to cover up and take the, support their fellow officers. Why? Because they're sworn to protect and serve, and many of them deal with a very hard job. Policing and law enforcement is not easy. So I don't want to make it seem as though it is, just a skip in the park. Law enforcement is a very difficult job. So you need to then change that culture. We also need to then look at what we call implicit biases. Most of these law enforcement agencies are overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly male. And many of them police in urban areas. So if they grew up in areas where if they grew up in areas where they have not really encountered anyone of a different race or a racial group, and they have these preconceived notions, they may bring that into their day-to-day job.
So you think preconceived notions play a part of it?
Oh, definitely. And what I call that is implicit bias. People don't outwardly acknowledge that, hey, I'm racist or I discriminate against people, but they operate off of these subconscious biases that govern their behaviors. Definitely. We all have implicit biases. And I think we see that in law enforcement all of the time. And then there's this notion of Black criminality, right? That you encounter an African-American male, oh, we hear that narrative, I feared my life. When there probably was never any reason for the officer to fear, but they go back to that. Why? Because in the media, in music, in our everyday, we associate Black with criminal, with man. Those three all together. Catherine Russell Brown coined the term the criminal Black man all as one, because we can't seem to separate those three entities. And I think that also plays a part in how police officers interact with African-American males and people of color in general. So we need legislation to change, right? We need the mentality and the culture of policing to change. We need body cameras, but I'm always hesitant with body cameras, because officers should be doing the right thing because that's the right thing to do, not because the camera is recording everything that they do. But body cameras help because it allows us to see exactly what transpired in the incident. That case in point was Walter Scott, right? The officer said he tried to reach for his taser, and when the video came out, obviously that was not the case. The officer went and planted the taser on Walter Scott as he was laying dead on the ground. So body cameras do help to tell the real story. So you need all of those components. Then you need the police willing to work with the community, and the community willing to work with the police as well. And it's a lot of different components, but if they come together cohesively, then it really will improve the situation that we have going on between the community and between the police.
Wow. Maurice, good. I know you got something. I know you bubbling.
It's complicated, but it's also simple. And I say that because all we want to do is be productive. That's all we want to do. We want to be able to take care of our family. We want to be looked upon as respectful citizens and members of society. And when we're unable to do that, as a result of certain policies, right? So, like in Baltimore, if you are arrested and convicted of a felony, then you lose your right to vote until what they call getting off of papers, meaning that you're no longer on probation or parole, right? And so there are certain things, certain liberties, certain freedoms that you lose. Now, some people say, well, that's rightfully so. You committed the crime. And others are saying, well, okay, shouldn't people be able to have their rights restored once they've fulfilled their commitment, their sentence? And so, again, right, I know for a fact, as I've often told people, I left Baltimore City and moved to New York to feel safe, to find opportunities that was not available to me in Baltimore as a result of decisions that I made when I was a teenager.
Wow.
And I'm just one of many who've had to either relocate to find opportunities or they took the entrepreneur route, and then there was some who just could not make it work, could not make it happen. And so they reverted back to what they have always known. Right now, I'm helping a guy that I grew up with who is 46 years old, and he's trying to find a job, and he's having a really difficult time finding the job. It doesn't help his cause that he did not finish school. It doesn't help his cause that he's been arrested and convicted a few times, and and for a city that has limited opportunity, period. Now, when you complicate it with life experiences, now you're looking at situations where it's really dire. And so Baltimore, like a lot of those small cities, those industrial cities, where manufacturing and the industrial industry, steel mills and things like that, once they went out of business or they relocated to other countries, you saw families of color actually their value, in terms of their income decrease. And then you take that along with the war, as they say, the war on drugs, and then you talk about mass incarceration. And so it's like Legos, these building blocks of obstacles.
Wow. Dr. Jones, I'm just kind of going back and forth because y'all got a lot of good information. Let me take it a step further. And I think we're kind of beating around the bush. Let's just go there. Where does racism fit in all of this?
Racism is at the root of all of this. There's no sugarcoating that. Our country was built on the backs of slaves. And, and even if we look at, I have another article that's out somewhere, and I talk about this, and I bring in the historical aspect of it, but it says, the title of the article is "The System Isn't Broken, It Was Designed That Way," okay? And it looks at historical...
Hold on, time out. I'm sorry, Dr. Jones. You said the system was what?
The system isn't broken, it was designed that way.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot going on in that article. But what I do is I look at the historical lineage and the lineage of the criminal justice system, okay? So if we were to take this, and I'm going to just give you a quick little lesson in the evolution of the criminal justice system, Erica. And so if you were to look at the system, okay, one of the things that we know is that our country was built on the backs of slaves, right? And if you look at laws, even we take them all back, one of the first laws that were enacted in America, a set of laws, were what we call slave codes, okay? Slave codes regulated the behaviors of slaves, and this happened after the Stono Rebellion in 1739. So I'm taking you way back.
That's
okay?
fine.
So, and these laws were created to stop slaves from gathering and going from plantation to plantation without their papers and whatnot. And if they were caught, then they were oftentimes killed. Body parts were dismembered, severely beaten, whatnot, just for doing little things like reading, writing, gathering, okay? So we have what are called the slave codes, first, some of the first set of laws. Then we have, and if you look at policing, modern day policing came out of the slave patrols that regulated the slave codes. So you had the slave patrols that would catch runaway slaves and send them back to their plantations or lynch them or beat them, whatever that they did, okay? That's where your modern day policing has evolved from, that system. So if we look at, so we have the slave codes. Slave codes then turned to what we call black codes. Those were other codes that continued to penalize and criminalize African Americans. This was after the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. So if slaves were caught, they were homeless or, violating vagrancy laws or just loitering, that sort of thing, they were criminalized because of that, right? But oftentimes when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, slaves had no place to go, okay? So just for being where they were, and because of that, they were criminalized. So we moved from the slave codes to the black codes. Then you get to this era of Jim Crow, right? So then Jim Crow penalized and criminalized African Americans for doing little things like drinking out of a white-owned water fountain, okay? Or sitting in a I don't know, public transportation where they were sitting in the front where they should have been sitting in the back, or certain carts that were regulated for different racial groups, white owned. So they were criminalized because of that. So if we look at, so then you move from the slave codes, and we go to the black codes, and we move a little bit forward to the Jim Crow laws, and then we have what is known as the war on drugs, which then began to criminalize African Americans and communities of color just for using drugs when it should have been treated as a mental health issue. I mean, as a mental health issue or an addiction issue,
right,
rather than criminalizing them. All of that then being enforced, right? Then you have these laws being enforced
to the third degree.
Yes, to the third degree, and by the policing agency that evolved from the slave patrols, right? So when we look at this lineage of the criminal justice system, it was never, in fact, it was never designed to treat African Americans or communities of color in general fairly. It was created to marginalize and oppress this group and to maintain the social structure. So we have that. Then we have contemporary issues now with these law enforcement agencies. Still at the root of which many of them were formed was to oppress, to disadvantage, to marginalize these groups. Still operating out of that foundation, then it's very, very difficult to see, how else would they treat African Americans fairly? So, there's an article that they talk about, I think it's Darnell Hopkins talk about Black Lives Cheap. And when you look at how African Americans have been penalized throughout the criminal justice system, the criminal justice system penalizes communities of color, African Americans, very, very harshly when they are thought to commit a crime. Okay, so when they commit crimes or perceived as committing crimes, then we get the wrath of the criminal justice system, right? You get tough sentencing, sentences, the worst. However, when African Americans are victimized or are brutalized by police officers, then you see very little compassion and you see very little penalty for the inflictor of the violence against them. So let's say the police officers. And why? Because police officers are agents of the state, right? So the criminal justice system is designed to protect them. So we have all of these issues. It's multiple layers. It is systemic. And that's how you then get to these points where you get the officer who feels as though he can just point blank shoot a black man in public as he's running away. That's how you get the old 71-year-old who essentially pays his way to be a member of the sheriff, and he says that he tries to pull out a taser, but winds up pulling out a gun and shoots and kills another African-American man. That's how you get a situation where you have, I think it was a white guy, he was in a truck, and the kid's music was too loud. He feels that he can just go ahead and just shoot this person. It's this notion of superiority and that black life really does not matter and that it is so devalued. And if an African American is killed or if a person of color is killed, they won't be missed. And no, there will be no consequence as a result of that. All that mentality, the way in which people of color are treated, all of that is rooted in the very evolution of the criminal justice system. And you have to understand how it was created in order to understand some of the things that are going on today.
Dr. Jones, you said a mouthful. I mean, that's real. I mean, you got to fully understand what's happening. You got to go all the way back to where it originated from. And
yeah,
and I guess my quick interpretation of it to those probably that may not really understand what she just said, there was a system that was created years ago, centuries ago, that has evolved, correct?
Yeah.
And we're still in that system in terms of communities of color, black, brown, if you will, low income communities are trapped in this system or caged in this system, trained in this system, and then some cop gets prideful, if you will, and boom, shoots a unarmed um, man of color. Um, the
Right.
pretty much pull the guy's back totally out of place. I mean, just so many issues after issues. So now we at the point, Maurice, where people may not be able to articulate it as good as Dr. Jones, but they feel it. There's something that causes them to feel that evolution of pain, if you will. Um, that now it's time for something to be done. It's time for something to be done. And so, Maurice, I don't know if Apostle Brian Keith Williams is on the line yet. You out there yet? I don't hear him. So, Dr. Jones, I mean, you listen, you blessing my soul. I mean, really, really. I gotta send you a copy of my book. I gotta get you a copy of my book. Nancy, make sure I get her a copy of the book because you are really blessing me. How about you, Mo?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowledge, knowledge, information is so powerful, and when information is attained responsibly and respectfully, it becomes even that much more powerful because then you can share that information, and that information can continue to be shared, like the black dollar. You know, one of the things that we need to do is to be able to keep the black dollar in the black neighborhood, in the black community, a lot longer than we actually do. And just share it. And so that's what I'm getting. That's what I'm attaining. This information, this knowledge to be shared within our community.
So then how do we use this knowledge in terms of our protesting or in demonstrating? And I know I kind of asked this question a little bit earlier, but I want to dig a little deeper. And actually, from this situation and happening in Baltimore, like for me, honestly, I'm a pastor, I'm a community leader, I'm a father, I'm a husband. I'm tired of it because eventually, if this keep happening, it's gonna come knocking on my door. In fact, it is already on my doorstep in terms of our people. So something has to happen. And I'm not saying we got to go down there and drop a bomb or anything like that and kind of, go back and forth in terms of war. To me, more people from the communities of color have to get educated. You have to finish school. It is of the utmost importance that you fit complete school. Um, I think also our school system has to be more intentional in teaching on Black history, not just on Black History Month, because that is a major part of American history. So I think we really really have to learn more about what happened. That way, people can respect, all like a lot of different gang members and things of that nature. People that go uneducated. So for me, I think that the educational system has a major role in helping the criminal justice system, because the educational system can give us the information that we need so that we can know exactly what we're doing when we're doing it. And Dr. Jones, I don't know what you think about that statement or anything that's on your mind, but that's kind of how I'm feeling right now. Did we lose Dr. Jones? Maurice Good?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Okay. So we may have lost Dr. Jones. Mo, I know, man. This is really, really frustrating. And I know there's community leaders in Baltimore now that are trying to pull the energy together, in particular with the young people and the people in the communities, to protest in a way that's meaningful, that will yield results, and to allow that cohesion. And then for me, after all of the protesting, after all of the different outcomes we really wanted to have happen, what now in our communities after that? Then what? Do we go back to selling drugs to our people? Do we go back to the whole gang violence issue? Because I know been a lot of violence and things in the Baltimore area, in the United States in general, in terms of gang violence and things of that nature. But so how do we reduce the black on black crime, the brown on brown crime, and things of that nature from situations like this? Or do we just, when a Caucasian cop kills a man of color, we get mad and we go all out and try to we loot, we protest, we do whatever, but then after that, we go back to being, what we once were.
I apologize for that. I'm back. I
Okay,
I lost the connection there for a minute.
that's fine. That's fine. And let me just sum this up. And I know you're hearing me, Mo. What do we do after all of this? After, let's say we yield the results we want to yield. The cop, laws are changed. The cop gets time or whatever. He gets, his due punishment. The system is making changes, and passing laws and writing bills and things like that, so that new laws are created to help monitor the criminal justice system and the police protection and things of that nature. What do we say to the people in our communities after this? Because it seems like right now, I can imagine that the crime rate in the community is less these couple of days. I wish we can do some type of statistics and see how many black people killed. Was there any black on black crime committed in terms of murder and things of that nature in these last couple of days, while the attention is focused on what happened to Brother Gray, and my thoughts and prayers go out to his family. So what do we do then? Like, how do we use this energy?
Was that a question for me?
Anybody can take it.
Okay. So I think, one of the things we need to do is take this energy while we have it, and work towards, number one, improving police community relations. That's where all this starts. But also, I would like to see, I don't have it in front of me, the statistics of how many African Americans are actually on the police department in Baltimore, right? One of the things that we have found in some of my research is police community relations improve when you have a police department that actually reflects the demographics of the community in which they serve. And so, I would be interested to encourage people to become police officers, get in the system and change the system. That's one of the things that I would encourage you. Of course, education is another one. Education is always key. And I always say that it is amazing that we have a public school system and many school systems that award degrees or diplomas to these students. And they really don't even have to take a course in Black history or understand Black history. I think that's a problem.
Dr. Jones, when you went off the hook, I said pretty much the exact same thing. That education is very important. So we
on the same page. Good. Right. I like that.
Because that's the truth. If you don't know, then you can't respect what happened. You can't respect what, it's like, all the different things that happened during slavery. Like, okay, let me back up real quick. My daughter, she goes to Wright State. She's a freshman completing her first year. And there's been some protests there against the inequality and things like that that's happening in our country. And some students took it upon themselves to lay the flag down and actually step on the U.S. flag. And I think it got some local news looks and things like that. And so veterans, people that fought in Vietnam War, fought in Iraq and things of that nature, and lost limbs and lost loved ones, are looking like you're disrespecting the United States flag. You don't know our history. So when I look at what's happening in our communities, you know, we don't know the history of where we came from. We don't know the history of the system. Even the whole Willie Lynch letters and things that, I mean, it's so many different things that are happening in this system that has been created to control, if you will.
I agree with you. Yeah, I completely agree with you. Um, and you know, education is critical, and who we elect in office is critical. And you know, changing the culture, please, all of it is critical. All of it is important to dealing with this issue.
Wow. Mo, I know you out there, man.
You know, I feel I'm conflicted. You know, I'm conflicted. I heard Dr. Jones in terms of community policing reflecting the community in which they police. I get that. I think that it is important, but I also have been I don't want to say the victim. I've had an encounter with someone who looked like me, who at the time could have been a big brother, an uncle figure, who totally violated my civil rights. And so, you know, it kind of makes you feel like, you know, and I've had conversations as I've gotten older with other males of color who say, you know, sometimes our people are worse than the other people, you know, in terms of putting on the badge, putting on the uniform. And so I'm, like I said, I'm conflicted. I do a lot of work with the police department here in New York, whether it be the South Bronx or whether it be Crown Heights, Brooklyn, just in terms of being that liaison between young people and the police department. And there are some very good people within just not just brown, black and brown, but also white.
Right.
And so I try to help the young people understand that you're the person, you know. At the same time, young people are saying to me, you want me to give them an opportunity, give them a chance, but where is my opportunity? Where's my chance when they're in a bad mood and they decide that they just feel like jumping out of their car and throwing me up against the wall? Doesn't matter who's outside. They, you know, totally violate my rights, you know, have me pull down my pants. You know, I've heard some really crazy stories. One story was a young man told me that the police threw him up against the wall, made him take down his pants, took a straw, told him to bend over, took the straw, and went in his anus, talking about he was looking for heroin. You know, the young man didn't have anything. They told him, pull your pants up and get the F from away from me. You know, so it's those type of, and that happened to him by a person of color. You know, and so it made him very hard towards it made him very hard towards the uniform.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that is very troubling and disturbing to hear. And you know, what I would say to that is, number one, that of course that officer was dead wrong, and this is where it is important for people to understand the purpose of the Internal Affairs Unit and to file complaints with their local police departments. But you know, I also work with several police officers, and actually, I'm the national director of research for what we call the Teen and Police Service Academy. So we pair kids up with police officers, okay? And we help kids learn how to interact with police, and then we help police understand the teen brain, so that they better interact with the teens. Okay. And one of the things in the midst of doing all of that, I have, you know, worked with officers of different races, and there are great officers out there, right? Most officers are good officers. And I want to be clear on that. You know, we get some that are bad. Most officers are good officers. Most officers love what they do. Most officers join the force to help protect and serve the community.
Right.
And with that, what I have found with working with some of my officers of color is that they too are fighting a battle within their own respective departments. So, in other words, you know, they oftentimes act like that. Number one, because the culture endorses it, and, you know, supports it, but also because they are trying to prove something to their fellow officers, because they are fighting a battle within their respective departments. And it's very unfortunate. And, you know, that is no excuse for that officer. I don't know the details of that situation. And, you know, it's terrible. But one of the things I wish that kid would have known at that time is, number one, you didn't have to consent to any sort of search or anything like that. But also, if you felt violated, what I would have told that kid to do is go file a complaint with the Internal Affairs Unit, and they have to open up an investigation. And at least that is a step in the right direction. Will be the outcome of that investigation? I don't know, but at least that, you know, something would be done.
I think we got Apostle Brian Keith Williams just called in. Apostle Williams, are you there?
I am there. I am here.
Okay. I'm sorry, Doctor.
Difficulty trying to get a hold of you, and I apologize for that. How are you today?
I'm good. We got a few people online, and I know your time is very limited right now. Just you're in Baltimore right now, right?
Yes, I'm at Empowerment Temple. The church is pastored by Dr. Jamal Bryant, and tonight there's probably I would say a good 3,000 people here. Church is packed to capacity. People are parked about as far as you can see, and they have the news and all kinds of media outlets, and everything is here, and they're having a town hall meeting. It's just actually getting started, and I stepped out so I can talk with you.
Wow. So what? I don't want to take up all your time, but what's going on? What's the feel there?
Well, you know, I was born and raised in Baltimore. I moved away after I went to the University of Maryland, moved to Ohio, and was in Ohio for over 30 years. And I would always come back, and you know, there's no town like your hometown, so to speak. But there's nothing, I think, that has galvanized the people in many, many, many years like this recent event. I know there's a lot of rioting, but that took place yesterday. It was kind of a pocket situation and got out of control. And I know the people in this area, and, you know, it's a very violent city. I did some research on it today. It's the seventh most violent city in the United States of America. And on my post on Facebook, I actually compared the north side of Baltimore versus the west side where the riots took place. And I know you wrote a book about fatherlessness, and they say that in that west side of Baltimore, 78% of the children are born to single parents. 78% of the children.
Wow.
And not only that, but they say 1 out of 10 people. Can you believe this? 1 out of 10 people in the city is either hooked on heroin or crack. 1 out of 10.
Wow.
That is incredible. That's ridiculous. So when you have those things, and you know, you have blacks in leadership, it's not that. But they say that there's a lot of corruption, so I don't know. But so we're here to pray and see what God wants to do.
So what are some some solutions, or what would you say to the people? And I don't know if you will have a chance to speak today, but if you do have a chance to speak to the masses today, what's on your heart to say to the people?
Well, you know, I'm a spiritual man, and the only thing I can think of is our weapons are not carnal, but they're mighty through God to the pulling down strongholds.
Yes,
and
sir.
You know, we've been praying. People have been praying forever. You got 100 churches on every corner in most of the major cities. But the problem is they can't come together. Now, they had 100 to 300, someone said as high as 500 clergymen that marched down the streets of Baltimore somewhere between yesterday and today. And they got on their knees and they prayed. And it sort of reminded me of the Selma movie when King and his associates got on their knees and prayed. And it was really powerful. It was very moving. But what I'm saying to you is that where there's unity, there's strength. In fact, the name of this meeting tonight is One Baltimore.
Wow.
And keep that up. If the churches can come together and stop worrying about who's got this and who's got that, and stop this competition thing and go into a cooperation move, we really can reach the city. We really can save the city. But we really got to stop playing these games of empire building. That's a problem. I'm sick of it, man. I am so sick of it. I was in that system, and I'm sick of that. You know, how many folk you running, Doc, and, you know, my folk. I'm just sick of that, man. Because while we compete with one another, the world is going to hell. And our neighborhoods, our children, we've sown the wind, we're reaping the whirlwind, we've eaten grapes, children keep us set on edge. And so, you know, I think we can do a whole lot. I can imagine all of us coming together, you know. I mean, even sometimes, and I never would have said this 20 years ago, Pastor Dean, because I remember when the Million Man March took place, I didn't go because of the Muslim presence and so on and so forth, and I wasn't going to march under Farrakhan and blah, blah, blah. And I still have very strong Christian beliefs, don't get me wrong. But my point is, I'm not necessarily talking about preaching the gospel necessarily to reach the community always. I'm talking about some social things. And when it relates to social things, we can come together. We're not going to compromise our belief system. And we can come together because we need all the help we can get, man. We need strong black men. We need strong leaders. You know, really, it's not a, you know, if you're hurt, the Bible says, if your enemy hunger, feed him. You don't say, I'm not going to feed him because he's my enemy. You have to feed him too. So at some point, we have to worry about other things other than our personal belief system and just do what we have to do, stay true to what we believe, and join hands. Where there's unity, there's strength. And I believe that that's what I see happening here. The Nation of Islam is here in big fashion, and they got some other religions here, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing because we all have to live in the same city. So that's what I'm thinking.
Well, how do you
Sorry
think?
for that long answer.
No. So what? That's fine. I don't know how much time you got, but I do have one more question for you.
Okay.
If you gotta go. So how is this? What's happening here? How do you think or hope this can mirror through the rest of our country?
You know, I think that what I just said, unity, I think churches coming together as it relates to the things we do believe we can come together on. I think as it relates to even across religions, on certain things we can come together. I think how it relates is that, you know, today it's Baltimore, but tomorrow it may be another city. I mean, we're seeing that it's no longer just a small part of Ferguson. It's not just Sanford, Florida, I think it was. It's not Ferguson. You know, when that situation happened in New York City, they controlled it very well because they're used to that. They're trained for that. Without getting political, my point is what we can do, and what we should know is this, that we need to start having, I think, citywide prayer meetings. I think that's what God is telling me to have, like citywide prayer meetings. Inviting the churches in. You know, change it from church to church. Who cares, man? But just bring the people together to pray. And at that point, at some point, God will begin to speak. And when he speaks, he will speak to the corporate mind of the body of Christ, not just individuals, you know. And we still can have our own strong independent churches, but we really need to come together and pray and then get together with certain strategies that we can enact to save our cities.
So in other words, those are some preventative measures before it really spreads abroad and really infects our country.
I mean, you know, you're asking very weighted questions. They're awesome questions, and it's hard to give a simple answer to such a complex issue. I mean, the bottom line is, you know, it's an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Wow.
You know, the bottom line is, you know, you can have an outreach program to teens and the youth and all like that, but hey, why not start from the time before the mother gets pregnant, okay? Give her some training and I mean, my God, man, what is going on? Who does that? The fathers do it, not just the mothers. I mean, we, like you said, man, in your book about, you know, about a father, I mean, that's what we need. We really need to raise up strong men. And that's why we need to pray, because you can't do it with just programs. You can't do it with, you know, outreaches alone. You have to do it through strong prayer. My son, for instance, in Columbus, he's doing it at his church. There's a strong contingency of men. I was just there last week, and I looked out, and I saw men everywhere, young men. I remember at one time I had more men in my church than women.
Wow.
And that's how you start. You have to preach it. I told my brother, you know, you have to teach principles, not just this emotional stuff, but you have to really teach strong principles, and men really gravitate to that. And then they should command their households after them in a godly way. They'll raise up a godly seed, and this thing will be transgenerational. It won't be the iniquity of the fathers, but it'll be the blessing of the fathers.
Wow.
It's not going to happen overnight, but there can be a move of God, a miracle. That's what the man just prayed before I walked out. He prayed for a miracle. He said a healing can come and go, but a miracle will stay. And that's what we need. We need a miraculous move of God that stays. We need the glory of God to come, and we need to really call for that. And we need to get these officials in those kinds of services. These people come to these services where everybody's around trying to prove how smart they are. That proves nothing. You really need to get the power of God present.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
You know what I'm saying, right? I mean, a drug program, you got to go through that for 6 months, 2 years, 12 years, and you got to keep saying, I am an alcoholic. But you know, you can come under the anointing and get delivered that night.
Yes, sir.
And he'll take the taste out your mouth. That's what I'm trying to say, man. We got to stop trying to do this stuff in the flesh and do it in the spirit. You understand where I'm coming from?
Oh, yes, sir. You totally preaching to me.
I'm not social, man. I mean, I'll do that. I'll meet them where they are. But when we get finished marching,
Yes.
we walk upon high places. That's the point I'm making.
Wow. If my people
Walk down the street. We'll walk down the street, but can we walk upon the high places, man? Can we ascend the hill of the Lord?
Wow.
The hold of the hem of his garment. You feel me?
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm talking about. Bring the power of God, man. You can't get these people delivered talking and making speeches.
Wow.
You get them delivered, man. The gospel of Jesus Christ, the cross, if I be lifted up, you feel me? I believe in that. I still believe.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
Still believe. I guess why I can't even talk because I can't talk this stuff, man. I want to tell them, listen, cut the crap. Stop. Get right to the heart of it. Jesus said, in my name, you shall cast out devils.
Wow.
And we're going to break the generational stuff, first of all, and then we're going to get them through. We're going to get them trained in the Word of God, how they think about themselves, start dealing with their soul, get their soul transformed, get them healed from all those memories and all of these different things. And yes, that's where the government comes in because then they make the opportunities available, and that's why we got to do it on both ends.
Wow.
You can't just do it on one end, Doc.
Wow. I'm speechless. We got Apostle Brian Keith Williams is really, really blessing us. But I really appreciate your time. I'm speechless. And I'm going to let you get back to what you were doing.
You know what I'm saying, man? You dress up somebody, you dress them up in a suit, and they go home and abuse their wife. What is that, you know?
Wow.
You dress them up in a suit, they get cleaned up, and they got 5 girlfriends, and they neglect the kids. We got to get them changed on the inside, Doc. That's what I'm talking about.
Wow. I'm trying to hold back my tears because when I look at the system, and I know Maurice Good, I know you know this, and just in my own family, and today I was actually going to talk about a miracle that happened in my life last week. I got a chance to meet my dad and my biological father, and we had a conversation for about 40 minutes. It was my first time ever shaking my dad's hand.
Wow.
It was my, and it was so powerful because my mom is dead, so I don't have any. He's all I got for real. I don't have any grandparents or nothing like that. All my brothers been to prison, so I see how the criminal justice system is affecting my own house. I remember a time I was preaching. I was in a suit and I was standing with my mom, and the SWAT team busted in my mom's house, threw tear gas in the house, and I'm getting ready to go preach. And so I'm like, oh man, they were looking for my brother. He had a weapon. Some things happened, and they were trying to, find a weapon. So I understand, to on my level that it needs to happen from the inside out. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and all of His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. And I know for me, God helped me. I know when I was smoking weed and hustling on the streets, God took that from me. I didn't have to go to rehab. It was my heart. And I think when your heart is in the right place, you can change at any moment, any time. So, whew, man.
I totally feel exactly what you're saying. I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I mean, see, what I'm saying is they say prayers. People come to church and they say a prayer. But we understand the difference between saying a prayer and praying through, okay? We sit there and talk, and we should talk. We'll talk for 90 minutes and pray for 2 minutes. But the bottom line on it is we need to pray and move the hand of God and let Him give us the strategies and let Him touch our hearts and make us one. This is not by might nor by power. That's the scripture in my spirit. Not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. We need to call on Him, Doc. We just need to call on Him.
Wow.
I keep referring to my son, but that's what God has used him to do, man. He just prays. I told him the other day, I said, I'm a praying man, but you're a man of prayer. There's a difference. Because I pray all the time. Smith Wigglesworth said, I never pray more than 15 minutes, and I never go more than 15 minutes without praying. That's kind of like me. I'm praying all the time. But the difference is I'm a praying man, but he's a man of prayer, which means he's the kind of guy that will pray all night. I'm not praying all night. I'm going to sleep, Reverend. The only time I'm praying all night is if I need a really serious miracle.
Right.
I am not Jacob, but he got the anointing on him. All night will seem like 10 minutes to him.
Wow.
So I told him, I said, you didn't get that from me. You might have gotten praise and worship and emphasis on the word from me, but you didn't get that from me. That came from God, and that's your anointing. That's your mandate.
Wow.
That's what's going to make the difference. And I'm telling you, that's people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. And when you pray and pray through, God will take you in the realm of the Spirit, show you things. And then you're moving the gifts of the Spirit. Before you know it, you'll have the greatest ministry and deliverance that will be taking place. People will be getting saved and changed. Husbands will be raised up. Men will become responsible, come under the right kind of teaching. That's how it happens. And pastors should recognize who God is anointed for that instead of being jealous of one another and stop competing. Our insecurity show too much. And what I'm saying is the moment God starts using somebody, we're so scared their church is going to be bigger than ours. Then we try to kill them because we're just in the flesh, man. And unless we come together, I don't care how much we march or protest, our city's going to still be in the same condition. The churches have got to come together and lay down all of this sectarianism and denominationalism. I'm saying believe what you believe, teach it to your people, but stop being afraid that somebody's going to become contaminated because they fellowship with someone who believes something different than they do.
Wow.
It's going to be all right, trust me, because it's the real world now. If we don't come together, then here's what we have. Our streets burn. Our cities burn. Our streets full of rioters.
Wow.
They can't process that. Why do the heathen rage? That's why they rage, because they don't know what to do with this anger.
Wow. And so, wow. Dr. Jones, Dr. Jones, I know you're hearing this. Maurice Good, I know you're hearing this.
Yeah.
I don't know how much time you got, Dr. Apostle. I keep wanting to call you Doctor.
I can't stay with you. I got to get back in the meeting.
Okay, well,
the rest of it.
Well, thank you for stopping by, and man, I just really appreciate what you said, and you really blessed us. So
no problem.
Praying
no problem.
for
Thanks
you,
for
and
having me, and to all the others that are on the line. God bless you. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to hear more of what you had to say, but thank you so much for having me tonight. Keep me in your prayers, okay?
Yes, sir. We're praying with you guys.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
sir. Whew. Wow. I don't know what Dr. Jones, Maurice Good, I know we kind of, closing out, but what do y'all think? I mean, what's on your heart now?
I'm gonna let Maurice go first here because he said a mouthful. I'm still taking some of that in.
I'm trying. I don't know how to even. I'm trying to. Yes. Mo, you still there?
I'm still here, good brother. I mean, I'm at a place where I've had a spiritual discovery, and so I like to think that I'm moved by the Spirit, right? But I also understand that you have to meet people where they are, and but so often, whether it be Baltimore, whether it be in Ferguson, whether it be in parts of New York City like Harlem, Bronx, and Brownsville, East New York, whether it be in South Carolina and other places, we need jobs.
Mm-hmm.
We need jobs. So, like, what I would like to see in terms of the religious community, right? I would like to see them come together and be able to do more to help put people to work. Because, matter of fact, it was Reverend Calvin Butt, the senior pastor for Abyssinian, and in AME Church in Harlem. And he is the Abyssinian used to be pastored by oh my goodness, Powell. I can't even think of his name right now. I'm at a loss. But the bottom line is, Reverend Butt said that the best social program is a job, and that is so true. People want to just be able to take care of themselves, take care of their families. People want to be able to hold their heads up in their communities. People people want to be able to have a sense of, a sense of pride about who they are. And so when I'm able to take care of myself, I'm able to take care of my family, I'm able to do things for the community. Now, I'm open to hearing other messages. But when I don't know where I'm going to lay my head, right, it's kind of difficult for me to sit before you and take in all that you have, all that you're offering me, when part of my brain is saying, where am I going to lay my head? Where's my next meal going to come from? I got this child support that, is going in default. And so therefore, it's just a matter of time before there's a warrant issued for my arrest. When you have all of those types of challenges and barriers, it's difficult for people to take in the message that needs to be taken in, right? And so I was talking to someone this weekend, and we were talking about the concept of love, right? And we talked about a gate, and God is love, right? And so like being able to help people to understand that there's an innate love inside of them, right? But it's kind of difficult for people to express that love when they're frustrated, they're full of pain, they full of hurt, and that pain and that hurt is turning into rage, and so it's like, I want to be where you are, but I'm nowhere near there because I got all of these real world life issues, life challenges, life barriers that I'm facing. And I'm tired of facing them. Give me some relief. Give me some reprieve from what I'm experiencing, right? And so, like, as Dr. Jones spoke about, people are tired. So, like, the young people are tired. Our seniors are tired because they've been carrying the torch for a very long time. The seniors are tired. The young people are tired. The single moms are tired. The fathers who want to be better fathers, who want to transition from father to dad. Some of them are working 3 or 4 jobs. Some of them don't know how to. So we're facing a really uphill battle, and I think that policy, right? So like policies, and this is more of a question. I'm about to go into a question for Dr. Jones. What policies do you believe are needed to bear fruit, to move past the ordeal in Baltimore, to move past the situation in Ferguson and other places? Like, what policies do we need to see that will be so that these incidents will become further and further apart?
That's a kind of a loaded question there. So let me take this in parts, because there were a couple of things that you mentioned that I just want to touch on before we get to the policy piece of that. I'll segue into the policies. A lot of the stuff that you said, I completely agree with you, because you started to touch on structural inequality. So some of the things that a lot of people may not know is that 20%, okay, so Baltimore, I believe, is somewhere around 63% Black, right? 20% of their population has less than a high school education. 25% of them are living in poverty, and the unemployment rate is somewhere around 14%, which is like twice the national rate. So right there, that's kind of painting the picture, which you did a great job of doing, and explaining, you guys, if my needs aren't even met, and I really don't have time to care about anything else, I need to make sure I got food on the table at night, right? So that creates part of this problem, and it leads to some of the disregard for the bigger issues. And so, when we see people burning a building, well, they don't care about this building so much because the building represents white power structure, which many of the residents don't even have, they're not even invested in that, right? Because the way we're dealing with this structural inequality, they can't even deal with that. So when let me segue that then into part of the problem with police community relations, which I keep going back to, and how do we have policy to address it? Well, first and foremost, we need to deal with, like you said, education. Okay, education leads to better jobs. Okay, better jobs lead to higher income. You get higher incomes, you're able to meet your needs, right? This is all falling under Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Once you have your needs met, then you are better able to help others and to improve the community that you live in. And so when we talk about policies, well, we need federal policies that are imposed to hold police officers more accountable. I mean, point blank, period. We most law enforcement agencies have internal affairs departments. So if something happens, it goes to internal affairs. But there needs to be some form of oversight for local police agencies. One thing that has not been accounted for is police officers. A lot of people don't know, police officers really are not regulated and are mandated to report the number of shootings that occur within that local department. And I believe after I think it was either Tamar Rice or the Mike Brown incident, Congress passed the law to reenact the person shot and killed, or suspected criminal shot and killed in law enforcement custody, but it'll take a while. So we need officers, number one, police departments, to report the number of shootings. So that way we have a framework to understand how often does this really even occur. We can make guesses, but we need some national data to monitor that. So that's policy number one. Policy number two is then making sure that officers do report. Many of we have what's called the Bureau of Justice Statistics and the Uniform Crime Reports. Many law enforcement agencies, law enforcement agencies in general, they're not required to report that data as of right now. So we need them to be required to report that data. So once we have the data reported, we understand at least what the magnitude of the problem is, then we can move towards remedying and fixing this problem. And then this is where, like I said, holding the police officers accountable, making sure there are penalties, making sure we have better training for police officers, but not just training, cultural competency training, but then also we need implicit bias testing for our police officers. And so, when police officers, they sign on to go through the academy, okay, in Columbus, they have to pass what's called a civil service exam. Once they pass the civil service exam, then there are several checks. There's a background check, there's a written test, there's a oral test, and then there's the physical examination also. Along with all of those tests, we need to be administering of the implicit bias test to understand if police officers are bringing in some unconscious biases and or discriminatory beliefs into their job, right? Because if they are, then that's going to dictate how they perform on the street and how they may react to individuals who don't look like them. So understanding that. And if they're, implicit bias test reveals something, okay, well, what do we do to get past that? The person got hired, or they have to constantly be monitored, constantly check in, have your body cameras, and then have a mandated number of trainings that they go to, but helping them deal with those unconscious biases before we even put them out on the street to interact with the community. That needs to be addressed. So there are several things in terms of policies that can be done in order to fix, at least help to improve the situation. And that, like I said, starts with education, but it also goes with, holding officers, more accountable. What people are tired of seeing is the officers either shooting or being violent and brutal to individuals, and then that officer really just getting a slap on the wrist or getting no slap at all. And that's what's making people upset, because it's like, hey, we're disregarding Black lives. It's like we're devaluing Black lives. And that's part of the problem. And so there are several different policies and ways to address those. And, those are just a couple that I got off the top of my head.
Whew. Wow. There's a lot of things going through my mind right now. I must appreciate you, Dr. Jones, for coming on the show and just really giving us your heart. I don't know if you have a book that's written yet, but if you don't, I'm gonna need for you to be writing.
I have a book out.
Okay.
It's actually called "A Critical Analysis of Race in the Administration of Justice." So it's out. You can probably get it off of Amazon. It's me and a colleague. We co-authored that book.
Okay.
We gotta get that out there.
Yeah. Can we get that link, Nancy, and put it on our page? Cause I'm gonna go ahead and purchase that book really soon. I want to get it today because just the information that you and wisdom that you share with us. Wow. You are a testament to the power of education, and we need more women and people in general like you to learn these things. The better equipped are not only our people, but just people in general about the issues pertaining to our country and culture. And we could have a whole show on cultural competencies. Not just that. Oh goodness. I thank God for Apostle Brian Keith Williams coming on and actually on hand. He's on site and just getting to feel actually about 4,000 people are at this town hall meeting, having a conversation about solution, and even bringing in other religions in terms of Muslims, the Nation of Islam, Christians. It's a good place to be when you can put down aside your differences to go after a certain cause, and that's making the community better, without pretty much minimizing or diluting your fundamental beliefs in whatever you believe in. I believe in Jesus, and I believe pretty much what Apostle Brian Keith Williams was saying, along with what pretty much what happened today. I believe in all of that. I believe that prayer changes. I believe that opportunities help. I believe that education help. I believe that reform needs to be hit from the top to the bottom. And so at the end of the day, everybody got to play their part. So no matter what level you on, you can do something to help promote change and to keep inequality out of our doors. So I appreciate everybody that's listening and watching online. Listen, we're about to go off the air. Maurice Good, thank you, brother, for coming on. Again, Dr. Jones, it was a pleasure and an honor. Hopefully we can connect in the future. And until next time, want to check, you guys, y'all be blessed out there. Next time, holla at me. See you soon.